Question number 6, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Defence. Have attrition rates in the last year, which reached 23% in the Navy and 24% in the Army, reduced the capability of the New Zealand Defence Force?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, as the Chief of Defence Force told the member at Select Committee on 6 December 2012 and also on the 22nd of June 2013, the New Zealand Defence Force has had no cut in capabilities. The member is also working with out-of-date statistics. The New Zealand Defence Force attrition rate today is 14%, which is below the historic long-run average and well below the 19% figure under Labour. Both Army and Navy attrition rates today are significantly beneath levels reached under Labour.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Phil Goff.
When the Navy admits that skill and experience levels in critical trade groups has been seriously degraded, their words, Minister, by the significant reduction in the number of trained personnel available, why does he keep on pretending that this hasn't reduced the Navy's capability?
Honourable Dr Jonathan
Because,
Coleman.
Mr Speaker, the fact is that it hasn't. The Navy is actually performing all the targets that has been set for it by the government, and it's meeting all the outputs that it's contracted to meet by other government agencies.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker.
Question, Honourable
If
Phil
the
Goff.
Navy is meeting all of its targets, why does the Navy say in its latest report that it can't crew more than 4 out of 6 of its new naval patrol vessels, can't crew more than 4 out of 6 of its new naval patrol force, and that the HMNZS Wellington wasn't available for most of 2012-13 because of high attrition rates? How can that possibly not represent reduced capability?
Well, Mr
Honourable
Speaker,
Dr
I
Jonathan
question
Coleman.
the selective light that member's casting on that report. The fact is, when you look at the NZDF's annual report, it shows that the frigates were available for 126% of their target last year. The HMNZS Endeavour was mission available for 116% of its target. The operational dive team exceeded its target hours in the water.
Point of order. Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, you heard my question clearly. It related to the Naval Patrol Force, and it said that they couldn't crew more than 4 out of 6 and that the Wellington wasn't available most of the time. I don't want to hear about that other irrelevant stuff.
Well, the member may well have to. He's asked a question, whilst it was relatively specific, is about reduced capability of the forces, particularly the Navy. The Minister, the Honourable Jonathan Coleman, has a right to address that, and he's attempting to do so.
And I'd like to continue doing that.
Minister.
So regarding the patrol vessels, the offshore patrol vessels would have met their targets if a second sub-Antarctic patrol was undertaken, but for totally unrelated reasons that didn't happen. The inshore patrol vessels made available 466 days of patrolling against a target of 455. So they actually exceeded their target availability to their agency. So once again, Phil Goff is making it up.
Order.
Fact.
The last part of that answer is unnecessary.
A supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
When the Air Force says explicitly that it can't meet all expected output and readiness measures because, and I quote, of a limited number of trained crews and equivalent obsolescence and deficiencies, end quote, how does this not represent reduced capability?
Well, Mr Speaker,
Dr. Jonathan
that
Coleman.
is just incorrect. I can tell him about the Air Force. If you look at the helicopter fleet, Navy helicopter forces flying rate higher than in previous years. The airborne surveillance and response forces, the Orions, they exceeded their target, 151% of target. The Boeings, they hit 100% of target. The Hercs, they reported missing some targets but still achieved over 1,300 hours of flying. The NH90s, the A109s, new capabilities brought into service, as well as the Orion and Hercules upgrades, is just completely incorrect. The fact is the only Air Force capability that's ever been cut was the Skyhawks under the Labor government. And that's the truth.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Order. Order. This is a point of order. Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, since the Minister says what I said was incorrect, I seek leave to table the quote that I quoted accurately to the House about not being able to meet all expected targets.
What is the source?
The source is the Minister's very own annual defence report.
No,
he should have read it.
Order. That's available to members if they so need to look it up. We have a point of order from the Honourable Clayton Cook.
Mr Speaker, without being improper, the issue that I think was raised with you about tabling of documents that you agreed to consider was an example of that Mrs King and myself discussed with you, where a member's word is refuted, and I was just wondering if you agreed you'd consider that. Given this case, I was wondering if you'd rule on that.
On the basis that there was a discussion, and I think on reflection, the member Phil Goff has quoted from a document that is available. The Minister, in the start of her answer, said that's not correct. So on that basis, I'll allow the member to again put the leave for that document to be tabled and sent over to the House what they decide to do. Honourable Phil Goff.
I seek leave accordingly, Mr Speaker.
Leave is sought to table that particular annual report. Is there any objection to that? There is not. It can be tabled.
We'll see who's telling the truth. Mr Speaker,
supplementary question, Honourable Phil Goff.
Supplementary question. When did the National Government ever admit publicly to the electorate that its goal was to reduce the number of regular force personnel in the New Zealand Defence Force every year that it was in government, and result in today's figures being 1,200 fewer people in the Defence Force than it had in 2009, a cut of more than 12%?
Honourable Dr.
Well, what I can tell the member is that Navy numbers grew by 4.4% last year. The Army numbers grew by 1.6%. Air Force numbers may have been flat, but the fact is, as new technology arrives, you don't need as many people to staff it. It's true. Sorry, Phil. You're the guy who's wrong.
Question number 7. Pesata Sam Lottewinga.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Housing. What progress is the